Hello, and welcome to another episode of Dane's Desk, where each week I ask our guest a different advising topic. Today, I'd like to welcome Lizzy Harman. Hey, Lizzy, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks for having me, Dane.
Yeah, you're welcome. Lizzy, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So my name's Lizzy Harman. I use she, her pronouns. I'm currently serving as the Center for Learning and Undergraduate Enrichment Program Manager, which is a really long way of saying I manage one of the largest tutoring centers, multidisciplinary tutoring centers at the University of Washington in Seattle, Washington. I'm really excited about it. It's been an interesting shift. I got into the field of advising, oh gosh, 6, 7 years ago now. And I primarily served at at Western Oregon University
Mm,
in their student success and advising office. And I worked primarily with students who were not in good standing with the university, who were facing barriers to their education in some way, shape, or form. And really, that's where I fell in love with the field of advising, as backwards, I think, as sometimes that sounds. Because I really realized that this field of advising is one where it's more than just students coming in and helping them register for classes. This is the place where I think some students, it's the only place they ever feel heard. It's the only place they ever feel connected, especially at large institutions. And that was something I loved, that this was just a field of connection. My master's work is in rehabilitation and mental health counseling.
mm,
And I decided, obviously, not to go into that because I thought that I would go too deep into that connection. And I really love that advising has the connection, but we also have some of the structure around providing students with support. So um, I'm really loving what I do now at the University of Washington. I supervise 60 undergraduates who are providing tutoring support to students across campus. And I get to do some of that advisor role in advising these students and how to provide support to students. So I'm now maybe one more step removed from it, but I love it. I love getting to pass down and have those conversations around how are we supporting students and what does that look like, especially for folks from different backgrounds in different times of the nation, in our
mhm,
society,
mm.
times of the year, like those kinds of things. So I'm really enjoying it.
That's awesome. And real quick, can you tell the audience about your NACA involvement?
Absolutely. Totally forgot that part. Um, I've been involved in NACA in a lot of ways. Currently, I'm serving as the co-lead for innovative practice for advisor wellness in the advising community for wellness and advisor retention. Really long way of saying I help think about how we help advisors think about their wellness as it relates to their role as an advisor in this community. And I believe this community started, oh, Casey will totally correct me on this, but I think like 2 to 3 years ago. And I
Mm,
was really fortunate to get in right when we started, just being really passionate about this subject. So, yeah, 2 to 3 years ago. And then I was able to present at the annual conference in 2019 before everything shut down on self care. So, I'm really excited to be talking about that always. So,
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and that's a great segue. So, for the audience, today's topic is a very important one. I know that's near and dear to both Lizzy and I's hearts is advisor self-care.
mhm.
So, Lizzy, about that topic, can you share some advice, feedback, perspective, anything you want to get across to our viewers today?
Yeah, absolutely. I was telling Dane this earlier, I could probably talk about this for hours and hours and hours, and I'm not always great at it, but I think it's a really important topic. So I actually got started thinking about self-care back when I was at Western Oregon University working with all these students, because I realized that the field of advising is about connection. And to maintain meaningful connection, you have to take care of yourself. It's like being on a plane and they tell you, put your mask on before you put your child's mask on. You have to help yourself before you help somebody. And I learned that lesson the hard way. I was working long, long hours. I was working with a lot of students that had a lot of concerns. There were some issues going on, and I really let my personal wellness go by the wayside. And it affected how I showed up as an advisor. It affected how I showed up as a partner in my marriage, with my coworkers, and I didn't like how it felt. And it just it really sucked is the best way of saying that. And I realized the hard way that I have to prioritize that. Otherwise, I don't contribute to people what I really want to, which is meaningful connection um, and that feeling of support. So I would say my tips and tricks are ever changing because my life ever changes. But I would say I think the first thing is just to give yourself grace to know that you need this and that to do appropriate and wonderful forms of self-care or personal wellness is not something that takes away from relationships or is an extra thing. I think it has to be a forefront thing, that it has to be done for you to maintain that meaningful connection. I think a lot of times I hear like, oh, I don't have time for that, or I'll do it later. I don't have the money to do that. It's not that important, or things aren't that bad. And I would argue they're always important. And it's always important to put that personal wellness as part of the day. I also think that it's important to think of it as something that's very intentional. I think a lot of the times when we hear the word self-care, especially in our social media society, I think a lot of the times it's misconstrued as something that's frivolous or extra or something like that. And self-care to me isn't something that's always easy and pretty and glamorous. I think a lot of the time self-care is something that's hard. It's not pretty, but it sets us up for success. As an example, I think for me, especially right now, so I'm a new mom. My daughter's 4 months old, and I'm still trying to figure out what does self-care look like for me now that I'm a parent, because it was very different when I wasn't a parent. But for me, I realized that I am a better mom, I'm a better partner, and I'm a better colleague and coworker if I can spend the time doing what I need to do to feel like myself and feel like I'm personally at 100%. It's changed for sure. I used to be an exercise junkie. That was what I did. And now it's drastically changed. If I can have 10 minutes to myself to go read a book, to wash my face, to go for a walk if I can, those things are very helpful for me. But they're hard. I have to build them into my day. They're not things that I can say like, oh, I have all this free time, because I really don't. I have to really intentionally set aside that time. So I put it in my calendar and I protect that time because I know it's important to my relationships. It's important to who I am as a colleague, as a partner, as a mother, if I can engage in that personal self-care.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, and I can definitely agree with the perspective of being a parent. And I love how you mentioned that your self-care has changed the way you approach it, based on your situation, where you are now that you're a parent, it has changed. Yeah, I agree. Like, being a parent, I've actually incorporated my daughter into my self-care routine,
That's awesome.
which is great. It's like we play video games together. So I know that's my downtime after I'm done my work and stuff like that. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And I definitely encourage our audience to really think about, what are you doing to take care of yourself so that you then can take care of your students and others in your support group, because it really is about acknowledging it's okay to not be okay, right?
Absolutely.
But then
Absolutely.
like you were saying, giving yourself the grace to take care of it intentionally and be intentional about it. Yeah, so really for the audience, think about what you're doing to help yourself out. Check out the latest episode of the Adventures in Advising podcast. Subscribe to our YouTube channel here. Feel free to leave comments below on this video and like this video as well. Lizzy, thank you so much for being a guest today.
Thanks for having me.